Good morning, everybody. If we could have you take your seats. Sorry, Ryan, I didn't give you a heads up. We'd like to keep the meeting moving. We have a little bit of a time constraint this morning. Senator Lewis and Crichton need to be in Boston by 10, so they've asked me if they could keep their speeches short, and that doesn't happen very often when a politician asks if they can keep their speeches short. So we're going to honor Senator Lewis and Crichton and ask them to keep their speeches short, which means that we'll all be able to get out of here a little bit earlier after they inform us of what's going on at the State House and back to our daily routine and enjoy our jobs. So welcome to be here this morning. It's nice to see all of you. For those of you that may not know who I am, my name is John Smolinski. I'm the Executive Director of the Wakefield Lynnfield Chamber, and on behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you all here this morning to our annual legislative breakfast. As we have in the past, we're very honored that we've had Senator Crichton. You're actually early, too. A legislator that wants to have a short speech, and he's early. I mean, you just threw me off my pins this morning. Good morning. Nice to see you here. Well, I was just about to say we're always honored because our delegation, the state delegation, has always done us the favor and goodwill of showing up in force. And once again this morning, we do have our full state delegation: State Senator Lewis, State Senator Crichton, Minority Leader Brad Jones, Representative Wong, and our newly elected Kate Lipper-Garabedian. Kate, welcome. We are fortunate, and not only do they attend this morning and take time out of their schedules to visit with us and speak to us, but throughout the year, our chamber, speaking specifically for Wakefield Lynnfield, is in continuous contact and conversation with various representatives from the offices of each respective legislator that's here. So this is just not a once-a-year contact. I know I've spoken with Representative Wong's staff. I've spoken with Paul Broder when he was here, now Kate. And Senator Crichton and Senator Lewis in particular have reached out to me throughout the year as well to get input from the chamber. So it's an ongoing process, and it's one we're very pleased to be able to have established as part of our advocacy for chamber members and for our communities to have that kind of representation and open communication lines with our delegation. We're also very fortunate we have the same type of contact and the same type of amicable relationship with our local town officials, who I'll introduce you for a second. But one of the things that helps make our chamber strong as it's growing, and as it has continued to grow in my short tenure here at the chamber, has been the support of our members and the support across the board of members of all sizes and types. And venues like this, opportunities like this that we have to come out and bring our legislators together, is only successful because of the support of many of our sponsors. And I have three today that I'd like to acknowledge for you and have them come up and give you a little bit of a welcome that represents each of their institutions here this morning. The first I'd like to introduce is Allie Hooten from the Savings Bank, the marketing director. She said coordinator. I gave her a new title. I promoted her to director this morning. So she's the marketing director from the Savings Bank, and that's over here to my right. Allie, would you like to come up and say hello, please?
Good morning. I'm Allie Houghton from the Savings Bank. We want to welcome you all here today and thank you for coming out. The Savings Bank just celebrated their 150th year last year, and we have a lot of exciting things coming in the future. So thank you for joining us today.
Another very good institution in town, and a very strong community-involved institution, and just so happened last night had a wonderful open house for their renovated office on Main Street. Beautiful facility. If you're not familiar with the cooperative bank, which is what I'm speaking of now, take a walk by, because it's a very innovative approach to banking. It's something that's not commonplace. It's not the run-of-the-mill. It's very much a futuristic approach, I think a common day approach to how banking is going in these days, to be more welcoming and friendly. And this institution has been a strong supporter of the chamber as well. And I'd like to welcome, if we could, the president and CEO, Jeff Worth. Jeff?
Thank you, John, and thank you all for having this event this morning. I'm Jeff Worth, President and CEO of Wakefield Cooperative Bank, and we've been a strong supporter of the Chamber for a long time. It's our belief that supporting small business in our communities is essential to the health of not only the people that live there, but the people that work there, and we are committed to that goal. and that ideal. This particular event is important to us because strong, assertive legislation in support of small business is vital to everything that we do. It's vital to us coming to work in our communities every day and going home to live in our communities every day. So we appreciate the legislators being here today, and we appreciate the opportunity. So thank you very much.
And our third sponsor for this morning, and a newbie to the community of Wakefield, if we will. We're very happy to welcome and have with us this morning Cataldo Ambulance, and I'd like to have Dennis Cataldo come up, get a good look at him. If you fall down somewhere in Main Street, you want to make sure one of his ambulances come around and pick you up and take you where you need to go. So Dennis, CEO of Cataldo Ambulance. Dennis?
Thank you, John. I usually don't take advantage of these speaking opportunities because unlike my friends at the bank who can give you some special interest rates, or my good friend Steve over at Ironside Financial, the only time you usually encounter our service is when you can't remember what had happened to you. And that's all we're hopeful for, is that somebody appreciates what we did after the fact good enough to actually pay the invoice. But quickly, just glad to be here with all of you this morning. I am most of this legislative delegate I've have encountered and work with on a regular basis in some of the other communities that we service. We are new to Wakefield. We've been there since the fall, since November of last year. It's been a great place to be. Mr. Mayo has been remarkable to work with. I live in Lynnfield, so this is very much home for us, for my team, and for me to be here with all of you this morning. I appreciate the ability to be involved in the chamber. Chamber does remarkable work in connecting the business community to the community itself. We're a member of 17 chambers of commerce. We have about 23 locations, about 800 employees, and about 200 vehicles. So we're a pretty large organization, and we feel, we really feel as though, our membership in the Chamber of Commerce is reflective of our commitment to the community and being involved. So thank you all. Great to be here, and look forward to hearing what our folks have to say. Thank you.
Dennis, I didn't realize the company was so large, and now that you've expressed your desire to be so committed to the chamber and the community, I'll be visiting you very shortly. If you could provide me with your financials, it would help me with what my request might be. We'll be talking. Dinah said you're very open to people coming by and just dropping in, so I'll see you soon. Come to our breakfast and bring your mug, and I'll buy you a cup of coffee before I pick your pocket. Okay, with that being said, I'd like to move right along. And a few moments ago, I mentioned that advocacy is a big part of what we do, and we've had a great relationship with our state delegation. But it goes without saying that locally, internally within Wakefield and Lynnfield, we also have a very strong relationship with our local community leaders. And that starts right at the top in Wakefield and how inclusive they make us feel, particularly with Town Administrator Steve Mayo. Steve, thank you very much. I'd also like to welcome town councilors, Paul Donaco and Maureen Butt. Maureen, thank you. Paul, thank you as well. All right, with that, we're going to move right into the meat of the program, and we'll get started off with the senior senator for our district, and ask Senator Jason Lewis to come up and speak to us now. Jason?
Thank you, John. Thank you. Does senior mean that I'm getting old? Well, thank you, John, and good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to the Chamber Board and all the members for the very important work that you do in our communities. It's great to be part of the delegation and have all my colleagues here, and also to be with our colleagues in local government. It's good to see Councilors Donaco and Butt, and of course, Town Administrator Steve Mayo. So I thought what I would do is just hit a few quick things. First, a quick coronavirus update, since of course we're inundated with information about that, but just a quick update from yesterday. Then second, give you some updates on some important local projects that the delegation has been working on with our local town officials and community leaders. And then third, some legislation that is a priority on Beacon Hill that's important to, to our small businesses and other community organizations and residents. So before I dive in, I also just wanted to add my voice in welcoming the newest member of our delegation, Representative-elect Kate Lipper-Garabedian, who is replacing Paul Broder, who is now the mayor of Melrose. So we're delighted. And she's going to be sworn in hopefully next week, right? Next week, hopefully. All right, so first the coronavirus, a quick update. This is a time when you're facing a public health crisis where competent leadership really matters, and we're fortunate in Massachusetts. We have a very competent governor, and we have a very strong Department of Public Health. In fact, a trivia question for you, the very first Department of Public Health anywhere in the country was actually founded in Boston. And anybody know who created that first public health department? Paul Revere in Boston. And it was dealing with cholera at that time, cholera outbreaks. And so that's where it all began. And Boston has a very strong health infrastructure, and Massachusetts has a very strong public health infrastructure led by our State Department of Public Health. So they are taking this very seriously. They're in close communication, obviously, with the CDC. Governor Baker did issue a state of emergency for Massachusetts yesterday, which basically means it gives the governor authority to take additional actions, as needed. And right now, he has advised state employees to avoid, large meetings and gatherings. We are going to probably see some of our businesses and other organizations follow suit as well. And really, this is a matter of using good judgment and obviously good hygiene. So we are likely to see more cases in Massachusetts and around the country. So at this point, it's mainly about prevention and not overwhelming our healthcare system. At the same time, I think the governor and the legislature and other leaders are cognizant of striking the right balance here, because this obviously can have a significant impact on people's lives and on our businesses and our economy. So we're cognizant of that and trying to be, strike a balance. The state legislature is planning to take up legislation next week that is going to provide some emergency funding that will help support the efforts of DPH and other initiatives that the state needs to take. So we expect to vote that legislation through next week, and we're also considering additional steps that we could take as well that would help in this situation, and also would further strengthen the state's public health infrastructure to deal with other issues that may arise. All right, so some local projects that the delegation's been hard at work on with town officials and community leaders. We're very excited that the Wakefield-Lynnfield rail trail is moving forward. The local communities have voted full funding to finish the design, and all of the money for construction of that trail is going to be provided from state and federal dollars, and that money is essentially appropriated for that project. So we're very excited about that coming, a great new recreational asset for both Wakefield and Lynnfield. Wakefield High School, Wakefield High School is now accepted into the state's school building program called the MSBA, and so we will be, over the next several years, designing and then hopefully with the community's support, building a new high school. That's huge for the students and the families, and it's very important for the community as well. The high school is kind of what I would think of as the anchor tenant for a community, and having a brand new world-class facility is going to be a big deal for the community. In other exciting news, we are making progress on an initiative to potentially relocate the DPW facility currently on North Street alongside the town of Reading and possibly Lynnfield in the future to a new facility at Camp Curtis Guild, which is a National Guard facility. And thank you to Representative Jones, who secured a meeting with Governor Baker recently. So Representative Jones, myself, Steve Mayo, and Bob LeLesher from Reading went in and met with the head of the National Guard, the head of the state's agency that deals with capital projects. And we are seriously investigating this opportunity. This would also create an excellent economic development opportunity for Wakefield, where the current facility is located. Anyway, a lot more to be said about that, but we don't have time right this minute. And then lastly, on the local front, the delegation is also working very closely with town officials, with the town council on the Envision Wakefield project, which is the downtown revitalization. And a lot of progress has been made on that. There's designs that many of you are aware of that have been created working with a consulting firm. MassDOT has given their initial approval, although we do still have to secure the necessary funding, which is somewhere north of $20 million. But we'll be working hard with the town to hopefully make that happen, because that is a great opportunity for local revitalization for the whole downtown Main Street and Albion Street area. And more recently, we actually, the legislature created a program called Complete Streets a number of years ago, which provides grants to communities to improve sidewalks, landscaping, pedestrian, bike, and car safety. And Wakefield just received a Complete Streets grant of almost $400,000, which is going to be used for improvements on Albion Street. So some great things happening on the downtown. What's it? Almost 400. Almost 400. That's right. Close enough. We'll take the 400,000. I bet you would. Okay. We'll let her have that win. I will just quickly outline what some of our state level priorities are, and then I'm sure my colleagues will speak to some of these as well. Recently, we passed in the legislature, Governor Baker signed into law the new hands-free driving bill, which is designed to improve safety on our roads. So all of you know we have to put our phones down now while driving. That grace period ends at the end of March. So after that, our law enforcement will start issuing tickets. So don't only in hands-free mode while you're driving. So that should hopefully help with safety on our roads. We also just recently passed the most significant education funding reform legislation in 25 years. It's called the Student Opportunity Act, and that is a major new support for our public schools, particularly for our schools that serve large numbers of disadvantaged students, but it's going to help all communities. So Wakefield and Lynnfield public schools will also benefit from that act. In fact, one of the reasons that Wakefield High School was finally accepted into the state school building program was because of some things provisions that we included in the Student Opportunity Act. So that's exciting. Healthcare is a major priority continues to be at the state level. We're focused on how to continue to rein in the costs of healthcare in terms of premiums, out-of-pocket costs. We know that's a big challenge for not just our families and seniors, but also, of course, our small businesses. And the state Senate has passed two significant bills in recent months, one dealing with high drug prices and efforts to rein those in. And we're very hopeful that that will move forward. Governor Baker's pretty much proposed some similar ideas as well. And then we also passed a major new piece of legislation to improve access to mental health care. We are supposed to have parity in terms of access to physical and mental health, but as many of you may know, that unfortunately in reality is not the case, and people struggle to get the mental health care they need, particularly pediatric mental health care. So that's a high priority for us as well. So a lot happening on health care. Transportation, we all know we need to do better. Our roads are congested, our public transit is not where it needs to be. I'm actually holding a forum tonight in Malden. It's going to be streamed live on Facebook as well, dealing with ways to fix transportation. I'm sure you'll hear more about that from my colleagues since the House has already passed legislation. Housing is another high priority, and obviously Senator Crichton is here and he chairs the Housing Committee, so he may have some more to say about efforts to improve access to affordable housing for our families and seniors and all of that. And climate change is also a major priority for us, continuing to support the transition to clean renewable energy and building the green economy. Massachusetts has been described as the Saudi Arabia of wind. There's tremendous wind energy resources off of our coastline, and we are embarking on some major development of wind farms just on the continental shelf south of Nantucket. And that's going to be a major opportunity for clean energy, lower energy prices, and also new jobs as well. And lastly, there is efforts underway also to look at ways to better support our small businesses. And actually, I teamed up recently to introduce new legislation along with Senator Diana DeZoglio, who's from Methuen. It's called the Mass Makers Act. And it includes a number of different provisions supporting small businesses, main streets, buy local. And one of the provisions in that bill actually came out of a conversation that I had I don't think it was this exact event, but it was a similar event with folks from one of our chambers. And John Hurst was at the event. John Hurst is the head of the Mass Retailers Association. And John and I were chatting, and he said that one of the things we don't have that many other states have is an Office of Main Streets, which would help to support and coordinate efforts at supporting main streets across the Commonwealth. And they could provide access to grant opportunities, technical assistance. So this new legislation, the Mass Makers Bill, includes an Office of Main Streets that we would essentially reestablish in Massachusetts. So we're very hopeful that that's going to move forward as well. So with that, I'm going to wrap up, and thank you again for this opportunity and for all the good work the Chamber does.
Thank you, Senator Lewis. I appreciate the opportunity you took to be here. Next speaker would be Minority Leader, go with Brad Jones. Brad, if you'd come up, please. Senator, well, I moved you ahead because they told me you were going to be late, so I can switch around again if you'd like. Okay.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. To try to keep it brief, I'll just try to fill in a couple places maybe Jason didn't touch on. Obviously, the single biggest issue we deal with every year is the state budget. We'll probably be coming out with a budget in a couple weeks in the House and debating it the last week in April. The Senate historically goes about a month later than that. I think the Senate is perhaps talking about taking up some of the transportation issues in the interim before they take up the budget in mid-May. Governor Baker recently filed a new economic development piece of legislation that will be getting some attention. That has MassWorks money. I think he also refiled his housing choices as a part of that to try to facilitate the debate and try to hopefully get something done on housing production in the Commonwealth. And like everything, there's sort of agreement on 10 points, but then there's disagreement on the next 10 points after that. And hopefully by the end of the session, we'll be able to reach some consensus. Another, I think, important piece of legislation that hopefully the House will be taking up before we get to the budget, but who knows, is an IT bond bill, DCAM, which relates to upgrading infrastructure and technology in the Commonwealth. And also working with cities and towns. If you're serviced by the Reading Municipal Light Department, their accounts were recently held for ransomware. So there's all kinds of efforts on an ongoing basis that any of you in businesses with data and technology know are being constantly probed and hacked into, and we need to do that. One of the interesting pieces in that legislation as well for the town of Lynnfield is library construction money. And I know that's a very, very important issue for Lynnfield. They're already on the list and hoping to be able to get that funding and be able to have a new world-class library constructed there. We talked about, one of the things I always talk about every swearing-in session is how whatever we kind of plan on doing and envision as the agenda for the upcoming year, something always comes up that impacts that and throws it off course. Probably, clearly, the case in point is coronavirus. So we're talking about transportation. The single biggest thing that's happened to transportation in Massachusetts right now is coronavirus. You want to drive into Boston, you can probably be in there in 20 minutes right now because the roads are pretty much clear. And that's kind of a scary thought. But what that all ultimately potentially means economically, a number of conventions have canceled already in Boston. I saw a figure last night that was 61,000 hotel nights that have been canceled in Boston. So that's tens of thousands of people who will be coming here and staying in hotels, restaurants, and what that means. What it means also in terms of the stock market, where we've relied very heavily the last couple of years to, in part, build up to cover our budget, but also build up our rainy day fund to its highest level ever, is capital gains. Well, obviously, it's tough to realize a lot of capital gains in a declining market, particularly in the markets that's rapidly declining. So all of those things are going to impact what happens in Beacon Hill. So whatever people list out as an agenda for the things they'd like to see get done between now and July 31st when we wrap up for the year is probably going to be heavily impacted. In conjunction with that, we also have this thing called the presidential election. And obviously the Democratic National Convention this year is in Wisconsin, but it's in July. So that'll be a week, generally speaking, we've kind of shut down, if you will, because obviously we have members who want to go to the Democratic National Convention. In previous years, there's been a Republican and Democratic National Conventions, and Republicans have gone one week and Democrats have gone another week. But we shut down, and those are all things that impact our ability to get things done on Beacon Hill. And as Jason touched on, the coronavirus issue is sort of changing every day. Probably most of us in the legislature were getting any variety of emails the last 2 days canceling things that were on our schedules for the next couple of weeks. Frankly, I didn't know whether John was going to send an email last night saying, well, we're going to cancel this. I'm happy you didn't. But obviously, those are the decisions that are being made. And parents are wondering about school trips. My son's got a trip to D.C. coming up. Is that going to get canceled? My daughter has a cheer competition coming up in New Jersey. Is that going to get canceled? And what are all those things that mean to families and businesses? With that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to John to try to keep it brief for me, and then we'll keep going through, but hopefully we'll have time at the end for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jones. And it's funny, we just last night had a number of cancellations because of the coronavirus fear. Even though we're a small group and a local group, we did a number of individuals that canceled. So it is impacting us in a number of ways no one would have thought of so quickly. Senator Crichton, thank you for your indulgences and your appreciation for your understanding. My power on the agenda. Okay. Senator
I've
Crichton.
been yelled at a lot recently for shaking hands, which is the only reason I got elected in the first place. But it's an honor to be here. I'm sorry I'm late. I think this is going to be an annual thing. I have drop-off every morning with my son. So I'll be here, but I'll be here as the speaking program gets started. My colleagues already touched on a lot, so I'll try not to repeat too much what they've already said. It's been an honor to serve in the public sphere for, I'm going to be out on 15 years coming up in June. So I was an aide to Senator McGee, who previously represented this area. During that time, a city councilor, a state rep, and now a state senator. And I love this job. It is every day I wake up, I'm so energized and excited to work on issues that are important in Massachusetts. We get to help people every day. We get to discuss some really serious policy matters. But we get to also come to events like this locally and exchange ideas. And this is really the best part about it, to have a two-way conversation. So as the minority leader said, I hope we can have some questions and answers after this, and I will stay around as long as I can. I should also just say that the delegation that I get to work with day in and day out, obviously heard from some more experienced members there, but across the board, we get along well in Massachusetts, and in particular on the North Shore, we work really well together. That goes across party lines. So don't be dismayed when you turn on TV and you see the infighting in Washington and you see all just the gridlock down there. We're getting things done in Massachusetts. You know, reasonable minds can disagree on policy matters, but at the end of the day, we try to find common ground to get things done for our district and also for the state as a whole. Last year, when I spoke, I touched upon 3 issues which have been covered a little bit, but I do need to give credit on the education front, the Student Opportunity Act. This is the biggest bill I've ever been a part of in my career, and really will have an impact on every school and on every business, as we will have a much better educated workforce. So hats off to Senator Jason Lewis for leading it in the Senate. You kind of just glossed over, said we worked on this thing. This was your baby, and you got it over the finish line, obviously with the help from our House colleagues. So how about a round of applause for Jason for that milestone achievement, really. And the other 2 topics I touched on last year, housing and transportation. On the transportation front and on the housing front, so we're the best in the, or number 1 in the nation for congestion. We're the number 1 in the nation, or top 3 for costs of living and housing. These aren't good things, and these are things that the legislature and the governor, to his credit, have identified as priorities for this session. So on the transportation front, you know, the House took up their bills last week. We're going to be taking up ours soon. Again, reasonable minds will disagree or can disagree on how to solve this crisis, but there needs to be action. When I started in 2005, we were talking about the need for close to $1 billion annually just to keep up with our existing transportation infrastructure. You know, we're here 15 years later with the same problem and the same new reports, bipartisan reports, saying that figure still holds true. So we need action. Obviously, it's affecting all of your businesses, no matter what you know, field you're in. So we'll be taking that up. Hopefully, good news to come soon on that. On the housing end, we are facing a housing crisis in Massachusetts. So 248,000 households in Massachusetts are now paying more of half of their income on their mortgage and home costs. 25% of our renters are paying more than half of their income on their rent. Rents in Massachusetts have increased 75% since the year 2000. I could go on and on and on, and I give credit to the governor for making this issue a priority of his, because he's really helped go around the state to educate all of our legislators, all of our local officials on the need to act and on the need to create more housing. We're producing less than half the housing we produced during the 1970s. And clearly, as our economy grows, and hopefully it continues to grow strong, we need to build more housing in Massachusetts. And one of the proposals is pretty straightforward. It would simply reduce the 2/3 supermajority required for zoning changes at the local level to a simple majority. I'm supportive of that. While I was on the Lynn City Council, we took up zoning reform. It was the first time in close to 100 years. And we got a lot of great things done, but we could have did a lot more if we didn't have to get to a supermajority. Most local decisions and most decisions in government are based on the majority vote, and I believe that will have a big impact in addition to some other housing things. So stay tuned on that. I hope we'd already have it done so I could spike the football up here and celebrate with everyone that we got housing done. But this session, we have some very big things. And I'll just wrap up by saying, the coronavirus was talked about briefly. Obviously, it's not the elephant in the room. It's something we're openly discussing here. But pandemics aren't new to this country. It's not new to the world. But in this new economy, there's certainly a lot has changed, right? And this is kind of new it's new for me in my role in public service, and I'm sure many of the folks that are serving in the legislature. And we have some steps moving forward that we're taking, urgently this upcoming week. But we need to hear directly from the business community as we move forward, recognizing that while our top priority now is keeping people healthy and preventing the spread of this, but moving forward, it's going to be the costs, from the global economic viewpoint, but also from folks that, can't make it into work on a certain day, or for a longer period of time, or the cost of insurance, or all the other costs that we may not be thinking about. So as we continue, as John mentioned earlier, let's keep this conversation going. Please lean on us, because there are going to be, budgetary and also policy mechanisms that we're going to need to put into place to adjust to this new crisis. With that, I turn it over. Sorry, I went longer than I wanted, John, but thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Senator Crichton. We'll move along now to our next speaker. I have to admit, gentlemen, that this next speaker is my favorite amongst the delegation. He and I have been friends for almost 30 years, and to prove that point, he and I both had a lot more hair when we first met. So it shows a little bit, and what we don't have in hair is now gray and a lot more forehead. But with that being said, my dear friend and Representative Donald Wong. Donald? Donald once compared us and said, I was Arnold, and what did that make him?
That's the movie from the Twins. It's always an honor to be here. But, are we always going to go by height and how people speak first? We have a lot to do. The coronavirus has hurt the whole nation. There's the International Seafood Convention was canceled, and that's one of the biggest conventions in Boston. But, having a strong chamber is a key, because they're going to be doing things to build up the local business. And I can't thank the chamber members enough for sticking together, because that's how you're going to grow, and everything is local, government and business. And we got to work hand in hand. I look at it and, I'm a businessman. I have a restaurant. I used to be vice president of a chamber when Jay was the chamber chair in Saugus. And that's what it was. We were building and bringing everyone together and making business stronger. And that's what we have to keep doing here. The coronavirus has hurt a lot of the restaurants, tourism. My own restaurant is down maybe 10 to 15%, but Chinatown is down 85%. how can you stay in business? How can you, restaurant, you deal with perishable, so you have to know how to order. And and that's only one business. There's other businesses that, like I was saying, tourism. If you get on board right now, there's great fears for flights. And I can't say enough for everyone that are working together, especially Steve Mayo. We're sitting together and talking about what we can do for the budget, what our community needs. And I thank Steve Mayo and the state delegation for working together to bring what Wakefield really needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wong. Next, we'll bring in our latest addition to the delegation, newly elected, or Representative-elect Kate Lipper-Garabedian. Kate?
Thank you, John.
It sounded like a bait and switch, Kate. You held the hand out.
Yeah,
You took it,
then I
put it away.
remembered. I've got some good colleagues reminding me of the health crisis that we're all facing. I'm Kate Lipper-Garabedian. I am very honored to be here today, and I thank John for inviting me. It was nice to have a conversation with him. I think it was in January we sat down over coffee and just talked a little bit about the work of the Chamber. I'm quite familiar with Melrose's Chamber of Commerce, where I've been a city councilor over the last 2.5 years, and it was really helpful to sort of hear about your context, and I'm grateful for all the hard work that you're doing on behalf of Wakefield and Lynnfield. Small businesses really are critical for people finding, job opportunities, for just the enhancement of the quality of life for people who live there. Certainly I've appreciated over the time I've lived in Melrose being able to walk over to our downtown and frequent the shops there, and I'm learning a lot about the different restaurants in Wakefield now too, and joining you at those locations. I don't have a huge legislative update because I'm not currently a member of the legislature. I can let you know that as of in a week, next Wednesday, March 18th, I will be sworn in, I believe at 11:30, although everything is sort of in flux. We're getting texts even this morning about things that are getting canceled, so it's possible that the date or the location could change. But I'm very excited to get to represent the 32nd Middlesex District. One thing I love about working on policy is the opportunity to learn from people in the field and think about the different perspectives when it comes to creating solutions to the challenges we face. And certainly it's been the case as a city councilor that I look to our Chamber of Commerce to hear about their perspective on some of the ordinances we were considering. So that included when I was chairing the Appropriations Committee and we were deciding where we would zone for recreational marijuana facilities, something that Melrose had approved at the ballot, so we were obligated to locate at least one dispensary in town. And hearing from the Chamber and thinking about also the Chamber members, where they were located and how they felt about the potential for a neighbor business to be right there was really important in where we decided to go for our first dispensary, which is going to be out on Route 99. It seemed like a good solution to sort of incrementally explore this burgeoning business development while keeping in mind the perspective of existing business owners in Melrose. Another that comes to mind is our recent determination to allow for the retail sale of spirits in Melrose. So again, we wanted to hear from the Chamber, and I personally reached out to the 2 businesses in town that have licenses to sell beer and wine to hear what their perspective would be. That was very important for me. I encouraged them to come and speak at our public meetings, which they did. I suggested they bring in examples of bottle sizes so that we would have a sense as city councilors of what we were even talking about, which they did. Because at the end of the day, it's really important for people who are going to be impacted by the policies to be at the table providing their expertise. So I would certainly look for you all to reach out to me and to my colleagues when you have thoughts on the challenges we're facing and the potential solutions we're debating. A final one that we worked on in Melrose was around our vacant commercial property, our storefronts. So there are dozens of cities and towns in Massachusetts that have requirements about property owners registering with the municipality when a property becomes vacant for a significant amount of time. And so I did a lot of research on this and decided to introduce such an ordinance in Melrose and based it off of the one that Arlington currently has. And I think Wakefield itself has been debating something along these lines as well in recent years, where Arlington actually provides the opportunity for the commercial property owner to put art in the windows. And we have a really great arts community in Melrose that stepped up and was very excited about this potential. What I love about the registry and that the property owners really appreciated about it is the ability for Melrose to put it all online. So it's a one-stop shop for small business owners who are looking for a retail space, an office space. They can go and see, what's available in our city, and it's sort of a partnership between the municipality and the business community. So those are a few examples of things I can take with me to the State House, but I'm excited to get to join my colleagues there, hopefully in a few days, and continue to just deepen our conversations and learn from you all going forward. So thanks for having me and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Kate. Welcome aboard. It's nice to have you joining us. There has been a number of issues that have been brought forward by the delegation. Are there any questions on any of that? Transportation, healthcare, health, schools, funding, budgets? Any questions before we let them leave for their meetings? If not, if I'm not hearing anything from anybody, Jason, one last word? Oh, no. It's rare, Jason, we don't get a question, so I mean, I'm not complaining. No, I'm sure you. Well, Peter, go ahead.
I guess this is for the whole delegation. I'm Pete Johnston from the Savings Bank, but I'm also a concerned citizen of the United States. And when I think about the coronavirus, I've never seen anything that has spread such wide panic nationwide. And thinking about the stock market and sporting events and, March Madness, potentially the Boston Marathon, all of these different events, and hearing Representative Wong talk about the International Seafood Convention and the economic impact of all these things, how is this virus worse than other viruses that seem to come up every election year? SARS, Nika, Ebola, all of these different things. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's very coincidental that these things seem to come up and then get politicized. And I just wonder how do you deal with that? I mean, how are we going to overcome this and get back to business as usual?
I'll take that. I appreciate where you're coming from, but I really don't think this is being politicized. I mean, the CDC is a very credible source. Those are experts in infectious disease. As I mentioned in my remarks, our Department of Public Health is excellent. Commissioner Burrell, I know her personally. She's a physician. She has years of experience in public health. The local public health departments that we have in Wakefield, Lynnfield, again, are run by professionals, and that's who we're listening to. Don't listen to a lot of the stuff that's on social media. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of hysteria. But and I think speaking for the delegation, what we're saying is, let's pay attention to what the experts are saying. And in my opinion, that is not the president of this country or even the vice president. But listen to the folks who are the experts on infectious disease. What are the appropriate measures to take? Don't overreact. For example, we're not closing schools in Massachusetts. We're not shutting down all of our businesses. We're trying to take reasonable precautions. Personally, people all have a different comfort level. I'm comfortable being here today as you are. I have an event that I've scheduled tonight on transportation. I'm not planning to cancel it, although I am going to broadcast it on Facebook Live. But everyone's going to make those calls. But really, I do want to say I really truly believe this is this is not about this being an election year or politicized. This is about something that is a public health risk, and we need to listen to public health experts in terms of the actions we take.
Are the public health experts saying that this is worse than any other virus that we've ever seen because it's being reacted to as being worse than any other?
I don't know that they're saying it's worse. They're just dealing with it as it evolves, right? Everything's different. For example, Ebola obviously has a much higher death rate, but there was never the same risk of transmission in the United States or worldwide. It was never viewed as a pandemic. H1N1 and SARS, were more similar to this, and but didn't have some of the same characteristics of transmission. So they were not. There was some risk of pandemic, but I think it was less. I don't remember exactly, back then, but there was less risk, I think, of it truly becoming a global pandemic. This one has the characteristics of being spread very easily, and the incubation period. Obviously, the death rate from it is not super high, but it's certainly a lot higher than the regular flu. And it is a risk for people who are elderly and who have a compromised immune system. It is a higher risk for them. So it's just different characteristics of every virus, and I think this one, unfortunately, meets a lot of the characteristics of one where we do have to really take seriously preventative measures.
Steve, well, this is such a big issue. Would you like to say what the town?
I want to back up Senator Lewis.
Come on right up, Steve.
Delegation has been really great on this. What we are encouraging you in Wakefield and Lynnfield, excuse me as I clear my throat, is to follow what the local health officials are saying. We are really pushing everybody to the CDC website. That is where you're going to get the best information. Mass Department of Public Health as well, but I know we're all on this all the time, right? And you hear all these, horror stories out there about, buy 12 years of toilet paper is the latest one and all those things. So I agree with Senator Lewis, and that's today. Today we are continuing events in Wakefield like this one. I don't know what that's going to be tomorrow or the next day, but follow first what you think about yourself, and secondly, follow what the health professionals say. I know that Monday night we had a town council meeting in Wakefield, and the town council invited our emergency management director and our health director there to kind of talk about this issue and really to get the real information out there. So I think it's very important that you follow that and follow what we're doing. We are actually reporting events to the state, so they have asked us to report them large events, so people can make those decisions and they can make those decisions. So please don't believe this on Facebook, all the stuff you're going to see out there. Go to the professionals, and I think the state delegation has been great. What I'd be looking for in questioning them, because these are the questions I'm getting, and I know how I plan to handle it in Wakefield, is that if we do, and for businesses in general, because I'm getting a lot of calls from people that are working, and we hear about this, that are either out of their sick time, my philosophy is going to be in town. They say you shouldn't do this, because you haven't cleared it with the town council, and I haven't, is that if you're sick, stay home. Do not come and infect everybody else. Don't worry about losing your sick days, because we can extend that if we need to. Don't worry about not being able to provide for your family because you're sick and should be quarantining yourself. I think that's what we do. So I think that's an area where there might be some help from the delegation to the business community. So I throw that your way. Sorry.
Senator Crichton, the reason that we're leaving soon is, in fact, we are the Senate is we're holding a caucus, which means all of the senators are getting together to discuss that exactly what Steve just brought up, which is what are all the potential consequences on our schools, on our businesses, on our most vulnerable population, and what do we need to be thinking about in terms of actions that we may need to consider taking. Obviously, we're talking with the governor's staff as well and others. But to your point, that's exactly what we are having conversation about. And having your feedback on what some of those consequences are, that nobody would have, that we wouldn't have even thought of, is very helpful. So please do share that with us.
Would you have any input into Logan's screening of individuals coming into the country on international flights with the powers that be at Logan? My friend's daughter got the last train out of Milan to Rome, got the last flight out of Rome to Boston. She was not screened when she hit Boston at all. No temp, nothing. She walked off the plane into the arms of her father. That disturbs me.
I've heard that as well, actually just yesterday. I heard something similar yesterday from a friend who had it may have been the same person, I don't know, but someone studying abroad, come back from Italy, and actually I don't think it was, because I think the father went over to pick her up and bring her home. And when they got off, he said, I want to, self-claim, I was in Italy and I'd like, what should I do? And there was nothing he should do, so he went home.
Well,
He's self-quarantining at this point in his
He is,
home.
he is, and she is as
Yeah.
well, self-quarantining at home, and they're not in Wakefield. But the issue that hit me is this flight originated in Rome, directly from Rome to Boston. Everybody on there was from Italy, had been in Italy.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised to hear that there wasn't any, because obviously when the folks were brought back from China, they did have to go into quarantine, right? And there were actions taken, so, yeah, that's a good question. We can probably talk to our federal colleagues about that.
Maybe at your caucus this morning, make it a
Yeah,
focal
that's
point
I
of
will-
discussion.
I will raise that.
When he said it was-
I will raise that this morning, and because we can reach out to Massport and find out what the procedure is and what TSA is doing or should be doing. Thank you for raising that.
Another point, I'd like to say that the town has been very active and progressively trying to address this early on and be proactive in trying to nip this in the bud. And I know Steve has had a meeting with his department heads last week through the health department, which he invited, yesterday as well, which he invited the chamber, he invited myself to sit and participate, to be aware of what's being done locally and what the town is doing to protect its citizens and/or its businesses, and looking for feedback. So they are trying to he already took preliminary steps to put things in place for actions that could be taken down the road. Maureen, did you wish to speak to it as well?
I just had a thank you delegation for working on this, and something that people reached out to me yesterday about is all these universities not letting people go back after spring break. My alma mater, Zach's alma mater, Tufts University, on that list as of yesterday. And so I'm thinking about, we're gonna have a couple of hundred students back home now and taking virtual classes, and just thinking about, extra hours at the library and things like food, and people who don't have a safe place to go back. Not everyone is so fortunate, and so thinking about students who are losing their hourly, jobs that help them pay tuition. And so just to remember, as we think about, I know you guys are thinking about Council on Aging and partnering with them, but also kind of the younger population who now don't have somewhere to be. And so I've been getting some text about that, and just, we can't think about that, but for me, it's where do we make rooms available? So I actually reached out to our library about, extended hours and things like that to help our students.
Well, this is new territory for many of us, and it's still going to be determined what action we take down the road. But I believe the communication that's taking place now is going to be very helpful to all of us in some unknown territory that we're now facing. Are there any other questions for any of the delegation?
Anything other than coronavirus?
Well, if not, before I let you go, I want to thank the Savings Bank once again for sponsoring, and Jeff Worth and the team from the Cooperative Bank, thank you very much. Dennis, thank you. I'll find you again soon. But thank you all very much. Thank you for being here this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day. The Chamber thanks you on behalf of the Board of Directors. Thank you as well. Have a nice day.